Tonight we step barefoot onto the sun-baked streets of ancient Uruk, where the air is thick with smoke, yeast, and the smell of roasted onions. You're not some noble sipping date wine in a shaded garden. No, tonight you're a barmaid, one of the many unsung women working the sticky, chaotic interior of a Sumerian tavern. You're 22, your hands are calloused, and you've already poured enough beer to irrigate a small canal. The tavern, more like a windowless mud brick oven, throbs with noise and heat. Its reed-matted walls trap the smoke of cooking fires, oil lamps, and bodies. It's barely sunrise, and already you're sweating through your thin flax wrap, a stiff tunic that rubs your armpits raw and smells faintly of goat fat no matter how often you wash it. You think you're ready? Let's see. The fire is already going in the hearth. Someone forgot to sweep last night, and the floor is crusted with spilled beer, grease, and is that a human tooth? The pit oven gurgles ominously, and outside a customer is banging on the shutter with the flat of his bronze dagger, yelling for the good brew. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Concealed, leave a comment with where you're listening from and what time it is there. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You grab the wooden lever and lift the shutter. Heat, noise, and 3 early drunks stumble in with the dawn. You force a smile. This is how your shift begins. You trudge to the vat, an open, bubbling pit of semi-fermented barley, emmer, and herbs. The smell is strong enough to singe your nose hairs. Historians still argue whether this kind of early beer was drinkable or merely tolerated, but in Uruk, it's basically breakfast. You dip a scoop into the thick liquid and pour it into a shared clay bowl, then grab several reed straws because nobody drinks this chunky brew without one. You learn the hard way. One time a fly got stuck in your throat and you coughed for 2 hours. There's already a queue forming. Workers, scribes, a man who might be a priest or might be very good at pretending. Everyone wants beer, and most want it now. You're expected to remember faces, debts, and preferences. Woe unto the barmaid who confuses barley strong for barley light. Outside, the sun rises like a judgment. A donkey brays. A toddler in a loincloth sprints past the door carrying a half-eaten fish. You smile, faintly. Another day in paradise. One of the early drinkers leans across the counter and whispers something about last night's priestess and donkey-headed love spells. You chuckle politely. Gossip is half the tavern's currency, and it's your job to circulate it like good yeast. But then, you hear the shuffle of sandals and the rhythmic tap of a ceremonial walking stick. Uh-oh. One of the temple functionaries is here, all bronze and pomp, come to inspect your ritual offering corner. You drop everything, bow low, and gesture toward the altar, a makeshift setup with small clay figurines of Ninkasi, goddess of beer, Inanna, and a sacrificial bowl. You mutter the required phrases, then offer a cup of brew. The man sniffs it, glares, and sips. He doesn't spit it out. That's a win. Still, he leaves a few copper beads on the counter, not quite payment, more like divine taxation, and tells you to purify the brewing stones better next time. You nod dutifully. What you're really thinking is, Next time, purify your own socks. A rat scurries under the hearth. You ignore it. So does everyone else. Quirky fact for the day: some Sumerians believed that beer was a divine invention, a liquid gift from the gods, and that drinking it brought you closer to heaven. You're not sure if heaven involves this much back pain and rat droppings, but it's a nice thought. You scratch your elbow, adjust your headscarf, and ladle another bowl of beer. The guy who wanted the good brew is now trying to trade you half a fish for a refill. You look at the fish. It looks back. You decline. A scream erupts outside, followed by laughter. Someone's ox has gotten loose again. And just like that, it's only mid-morning. The sun climbs higher, and so does your discomfort. Sweat pools in places you'd rather not describe, and your tunic is sticking to you like it was woven from ancient flypaper. This is the moment you regret not asking the neighbor's wife how to stitch in a proper underlayer. Instead, the flax rubs your inner thighs with every step, and the fibers have stiffened from weeks of washing in gritty canal water. You scratch at a welt forming near your hip and glance toward the hearth. One of the other barmaids, older, meaner, with elbows sharp enough to slice emmer bread, is glaring at you. You're still the junior here, and she makes sure you know it. She clicks her tongue and gestures to the washing pots. Time to clean the mugs again. You kneel beside the water basin, dunking clay bowls into warm, soapy runoff. It's made from leftover ash, crushed reeds, and a hint of bruised herbs that smells vaguely medicinal. You scrub with a rag so worn it's basically thread. Your hands are pruny within minutes, and the skin between your fingers tingles from the alkaline sludge. Historians still argue whether Sumerians had true soap or just used ash and oil blends, but your cracked knuckles say, whatever it was, it stings. A buzz drifts through the tavern. Another group of day laborers just arrived from a nearby ziggurat project, carrying dust on their arms and sunburn on their shoulders. You try to ignore their eyes as they glance you over, half curiosity, half entitlement. One makes a joke about barley skirts and gets a sharp jab from his friend. You rise, wiping your hands on your tunic. Bad idea. The sweat smears into a paste. As you walk to the storeroom, your sandals stick to the packed earth floor. One strap's already half snapped, and you dread the moment it gives out completely. That happened last week, and you hobbled for hours before a customer helpfully offered his own sandal, which he then insisted you repay in songs. You sang, but off-key and loud. He didn't ask again. Inside the storeroom, it's dark and cooler, barely. A single oil lamp flickers beside the jars, barley, dates, mash, and something you're pretty sure used to be fish. You grab a new bundle of linen strips for filtering beer and duck under the low doorway. The lintel smacks your forehead. Again, you mutter a quiet curse to Ninkasi. I get it. Beer is sacred. Could you maybe raise the ceiling next time? Outside, your coworker calls out, someone's asking for the good oil. That's your cue. You fetch the tall-necked jar and bring it over. The good oil is sesame, rare and slightly sweet, used to anoint everything from beer to babies to idols. You pour a careful trickle into a shallow bowl and offer it with a slice of flat bread. The customer, a middle-aged woman in a head wrap, smiles and presses 2 barley cakes into your hand. You pocket them quickly. That's your breakfast. Quirky detail time? The Sumerians use oil not just for food, but for grooming. You once watched your boss rub warm sesame oil into her scalp, then comb it through with a bronze pin. Apparently it softens the hair. You tried it. Once. The result was slick. You nearly slipped trying to bow before a minor priest and landed butt first in the altar sand. Back behind the bar, you hear raised voices. A farmer and a grain collector are arguing about last week's debt. You edge away. Tavern fights are common, and they always start over two things: beer measures or bad jokes about someone's ox. The older barmaid steps in with a wooden ladle. Not to serve. No, she's brandishing it like a weapon. The men back down. You breathe easier. Historians suggest taverns in Sumer weren't just bars. They were female-run businesses, sometimes even doubling as informal courts or gossip hubs. Some were tied to temples, others to shady characters with connections to more than just barley. Your place? Somewhere in between. You're still not sure if your boss is devout or just very good at playing both sides. You duck under a low beam to clean another table, and your hip knocks a jug off balance. It wobbles, tips, and spills. Warm barley brew oozes down the table edge, soaking into your sandal. You look up. The older barmaid saw it. She doesn't yell, just raises one eyebrow and points at the mop. You sigh. Another mess. Another hour, and the sun is nowhere near setting. By mid-morning, the tavern starts to thrum like a hive. The sun outside is relentless, but in here the air is syrupy with heat, yeast, and unwashed linen. You're already on your third bucket of mop water, and your arms ache in places that shouldn't have muscles. Then, like a whisper of divine judgment, he enters. The priest, or is he? He glides through the curtain like a cloud of incense, draped in bleached linen, gold-threaded sash, and a glinting bronze cylinder seal dangling from his neck. His beard is waxed into a mathematically impossible curl. Two barefoot boys trail him, each holding a writing tablet and stylus like ceremonial accessories. He doesn't speak at first. He just looks at you. Not in the leering way the farmers do. No, this is different. Calculated. As if you're part of a ledger he's auditing with his eyes. You bow low. Too low. You catch a whiff of your own armpit and try not to recoil. He speaks. 2 bowls. First draw. Fresh. You nod and move toward the fermentation vat. Your heartbeat triples. First draw means the top. Before the dregs settle, it's the cleanest layer, lightest in grain bits, but only if it hasn't been sitting too long. You grab a fine mesh cloth and your best ladle. Behind you, one of the boys giggles. You pour, filter, and serve the bowls onto a reed tray, hands shaking just enough to ripple the liquid. He sips, slowly. The silence thickens. Historians still argue whether cylinder seals were primarily status symbols or practical ID cards. But in taverns like yours, they're basically flashing badges. You've learned a seal wearer can get you punished, patronized, or promoted, sometimes all in one visit. Passable, he says finally. He drops a shiny piece of copper into the tray. Your stomach lurches. It's more than you earn in 2 days. Then he adds, without looking up, "You've improved. Continue this." You murmur thanks, eyes to the floor. As he turns to go, he flicks his wrist. One of the boys tosses a chunk of pressed date cake onto your tray. Payment? Praise? A test? Who knows? You pocket it anyway. Later, while sweeping the entrance mat of crushed husks and sandal grime, your coworker sidles up and snorts. Careful. Last girl he praised wound up donating her cousin to the temple kitchen for a month. You don't ask. The rhythm of the tavern resumes. Clink, slosh, whisper, shout. A young couple sits in the corner, speaking in low tones. She's nervous. He keeps touching his ankle. Maybe to show off his new tattoo? You've seen this courtship pattern before. If it ends well, they'll be back tomorrow with a baby name list. If not, she'll come alone, looking for advice and barley wine. You head to the back where someone's been sick again. The puddle is suspiciously red, but upon closer inspection, it's just date wine and panic. You toss sand over it, sweep it into the pit, and mutter a quick prayer to Gula, goddess of healing. Quirky fact time. Some taverns actually doubled as shrines. A cup of beer, a carved figurine, and boom, you're a makeshift priestess by default. You once had a man confess his sins to your mop handle. He wept. You patted his shoulder. The mop remained stoic. Your stomach growls. You sneak a bite of the date cake. It's dry but sweet like compressed sunshine and tree bark. You savor it behind a pillar while pretending to inspect a crack in the wall. A crash from the front jolts you back into the present. A man has tripped over a sleeping dog and launched his bowl of beer into another man's lap. There's shouting, shoving. Someone unsheathes a spoon. You sigh and grab the broom. Time to restore order. One barley bristle at a time. The spoon duel ends before it begins. Thankfully, you wedge yourself between the two men, lifting your broom like a soldier's spear, and bark the three sacred tavern words. Out or oil tax. That last one always works. Nothing empties a brawler's lungs like the threat of royal levy. As they grumble their way out, the room breathes easier. You lean on the broom for a moment, pretending you're a pillar of strength, not just a sore-footed barmaid with barley foam on her elbow. The lull doesn't last. A rustle of movement near the curtained alcove warns you. Someone important has just arrived. Not a priest, not a drunk. Worse, a man who dresses like a priest but smells like a collector. You brace yourself. He parts the reed curtain with a flourish and steps in, followed by two men in temple blue. His sandals gleam. His beard has been recently oiled. He's one of those quiet types who speaks only after everyone else has shut up, and they always do. He doesn't sit. He surveys. His eyes settle on the clay offering table in the corner, the little shrine to Ninkasi, where every shift you leave the first ladle of beer and a pinch of barley cake. It's part tradition, part protection. Where's the second bowl? He asks. Your mouth goes dry. Second bowl? The second bowl of offering. Ninkasi's due 2 today. Festival week. Right. Festival week. You forgot. In the chaos of mopping up vomit and threats, you missed the moon phase. You mumble an apology, grab a bowl, and ladle a perfect pour. He watches every movement. He steps closer. You're aware of the smell of your tunic, old beer, warm sweat, crushed lentils. You pray he has a cold. He inspects the offering, then nods curtly. Keep the balance. One for the goddess, one for her priest. A flick of the hand. You hand him the second bowl. He drinks. Not sips. Drinks. All of it. Wipes his mouth with the back of his jeweled hand. and leaves without another word. Historians still argue whether taverns were truly sacred spaces or just tolerated by the temple elite. But you've seen enough to know the gods love their beer, and their priests love it even more. You exhale. Quirky tidbit: some Sumerian deities had entire hymns written about beer. One even refers to a goddess blessing the tavern keeper with foam. You tried singing it once during a late shift. The rats dance. After that ordeal, you sit, just for a second, on the edge of a storage jar. Your legs ache. You flex your toes inside your sandals and feel the hot squish of spilled mash. Delightful. But there's no rest in a tavern. A boy runs in, maybe 12 years old, out of breath and clutching a bundle of reeds. He slams it on the counter. For the gods! From the high house! You nod, offerings. You tie the reeds into little bundles and place them beside the altar. One drops. You bend to pick it up, only to hear a very distinct crunch beneath your foot. You lift your sandal, a sacred seal. Crushed. It must have rolled from the collector's robes during his dramatic exit. You freeze. What now? Return it? Pretend it was never there? You glance around. No one saw. Except the rat, who stares at you like it's waiting for a confession. You slip the cracked seal into a cloth pouch and hide it in your belt. You'll deal with it later. A new group enters. Scribes from the temple school. They speak in coded jokes, order their beer lukewarm, and want it poured by someone with clever hands. You oblige, wondering if they'd be so poetic if they saw your feet right now. You serve them, smile, retreat. As they talk, one scribe mentions a recent omen, a moon shadow falling on a temple roof. Everyone gasped. A war might be coming, or a flood, or maybe a marriage. Sumerian omens? Take your pick. You drift back toward the corner where your broom waits. There's always more sweeping, more spilled dreams to collect. And in the background, the broken seal pulses in your pocket like a whisper from the gods. The kitchen is worse than the main room. Always is. You duck beneath the low arch and enter the rear space. Really just a blackened alcove with a pit oven, a smoky vent that doesn't vent, and shelves lined with jars that smell like they've seen several dynasties come and go. Your job this time? Food prep. You're not trained in cooking per se, but in Sumer, being a barmaid means being everything. Brewer, cleaner, entertainer, occasionally minor deity impersonator, and yes, cook. You cross to the hearth, where yesterday's fire still smolders. You poke at it with a charred stick and sprinkle dried dung over the coals. It flares and you step back, coughing. What's on the menu? Same as always. Bread, onions, stewed lentils, maybe a scrap of fish if it hasn't gone green. You rummage through the baskets. Ah, the bread. Flat, hard, dusted with ash, shaped vaguely like a disc that's been stepped on. You reheat it over the fire using your fingers because tongs don't exist and your calluses are thick enough to shame a bricklayer's. You ladle lentils into small clay bowls and drop a wedge of bread into each. The smell isn't bad, earthy, honest, with a hint of yesterday's regrets. You glance at the corner where a rat has taken up residence under the grain sack. It watches you, twitching, respectful. Historians still argue whether Sumerian taverns were full-service inns or just drinks and gossip joints. But your kitchen says this is fine dining. If you like your meals seasoned with smoke and the occasional beetle, you hear a clatter outside. A jug has fallen. Someone swears loudly. Then a voice bellows your name, your real name, not Hey Girl or Broom Hands. That's never a good sign. You hurry out, wiping your hands on your already filthy tunic. And there she is, the boss, your employer, owner of the tavern, sometime brewer, sometime gossip queen, full-time terrifying. She's standing by the counter holding an empty beer jar and staring daggers. You left the vat uncovered, she says. You blink. You didn't. You're sure. Pretty sure. Maybe. You rush to the fermentation vat and, yep, lids tilted. A fly floats lazily across the surface, legs up, dreaming of the afterlife. You grab the scoop and fish it out, muttering an apology to Ninkasi. Then you replace the lid and drop a heavy reed mat over the top for good measure. I don't want spoiled mash, the boss says. Not today. Why? You ask. She doesn't answer, just nods toward the door. You follow her gaze and freeze. A group of men is approaching. Not locals. You can tell by the braids, the height, the silence. Mercenaries, maybe? Guards from another district? They carry short blades, dusty cloaks, and expressions that suggest they're always calculating the quickest way to the exits. Great. Outsiders. You rush to the kitchen and start plating faster. A rat squeals as you shove its sack aside. The lentils hiss and the bread breaks in half like dried clay. You plate, pour, and hope they like their food fast and their beer warm. One of the men eyes you as you serve. You keep your gaze downward. He grunts approval. Then he sets something on the table, a silver bead. Your heart skips. Silver is serious. Silver is temple tier. It's also stolen more often than it's earned. Quirky tidbit? Sumerians used silver rings as proto-currency. And your boss once claimed she got 3 for a single night's drink service. Then she winked and added, and 2 proposals. You don't touch the bead. Just nod. But the man gestures. He wants more. Another bowl, a stronger pour. Maybe something extra. You glance at your boss, who shrugs in that fatalistic way of hers. Your arms move on autopilot. You fetch the reserve jug, the one stashed in the cool pit. You pour a darker, richer brew into a larger bowl. It smells like burnt dates and risk. He drinks, smiles, and says nothing. Then he lifts his seal. Worn, the clay it pressed was probably dry before you were born, but it's there, a symbol. You've seen it before. It matches the broken seal in your pocket. Your throat tightens. Coincidence or cosmic joke? You back away slowly, pretending to adjust a curtain. Your shift just got a whole lot longer. The silver bead glints on the table, like it knows something you don't. You can't stop glancing at the man. Tall, dust-streaked, arms folded. His seal, identical to the one in your belt pouch, is now looped back around his wrist like a casual threat. You don't believe in omens until you do. He doesn't say another word, just sips, smiles, watches, and then, with a motion as smooth as a scribe folding his tablet, he rises. His men follow. No argument, no warning, just the sound of bronze sandals scraping the floor. And they're gone. You don't breathe until the dust settles. Later, much later, when the sun begins its slow slide toward the western edge of the ziggurat and the tavern cools by a single reluctant degree, you find yourself behind the counter counting the day's earnings. Only it's not coins or shells or tokens, it's barley. Specifically, sacks of it, in various levels of fullness, smelliness, and rodent infiltration. See, actual coinage isn't the default here in Uruk, not yet. You're paid in weight, in measures of grain, sometimes in beads or bits of silver, but mostly in scoops of the stuff you already used to brew the beer. Barley is beer, barley is bread, barley is, annoyingly, everything. You crouch beside the storeroom pit and begin sorting. There's good barley, pale, smooth, no bugs. Then there's the it'll-do barley, damp, slightly sticky, probably harvested before it was legal. Then there's the bad stuff. You feed that to the rats, or trade it to the bathhouse for soap, maybe. Quirky fact? Some scholars think Sumerians had a proto-bank system, storing barley and lending it with interest. You've never seen such a place. But your boss keeps a tally stick behind the wine jug that she guards like it's the Ark of the Covenant. She walks in now, of course, catching you mid-sort. You're short, she says. You look up. Short what? She points at the pile. That's less than a gur. Where's the rest? You shrug, then point at the cracked bowl someone used earlier. Half of it probably spilled during that mess. She frowns. You need to ask for proper measuring cups. Don't just guess. You suppress a laugh. Your measuring cup is a chipped bowl marked with a red wax line. Accuracy isn't the goal. Speed is. Still, you nod solemnly and pretend to adjust the inventory. She leaves. You exhale. Then comes the goat. Yes, a goat. It's led in by a young man with wild eyes and a tunic 3 sizes too large. He's smiling, but not in a way that inspires trust. I bring payment, he declares proudly, for debts. You stare at the goat. It stares back. Whose debt? My uncle's, he replies. He drank 12 bowls, told me to pay. You blink. With a goat? The goat, to its credit, bleats in agreement. Historians still argue whether barmaids had legal authority to collect debt, but in your tavern, the rule is simple. If it breathes or grows, it can be traded. You glance at the boss. She shrugs again. Put it in the corner. We'll butcher it or milk it later. You tug the goat, reluctantly cooperative, toward the storeroom. It tries to eat the mop. You redirect. It tries to chew your tunic. You swat. Eventually, it settles in the corner beside the jar of dried leeks. You pause, smile, and whisper, "Don't eat the seal." Just then, a customer taps the counter. You turn. It's a merchant you recognize. He pays in polished beads and leaves generous tips when you compliment his sandals. Strong today? He asks. Very, you reply. Brewed with extra mash. He grins. Then I'll need extra bread. As you prepare his tray, 2 bowls, a hunk of flat bread, a smear of lentil paste, you glance toward the seal in your pouch. You've half convinced yourself it's a coincidence, the man's seal, your broken one, they can't be connected. Still, you feel it there, like a stone in your sandal. And as you pass the tray over the counter, your fingers tremble just slightly. Because you know this day isn't done with you yet. You've barely stepped back from the counter when he arrives. Not a priest, not a guard, Not a rat, though he shares their energy. No, this is the man with the seal. That guy. The one who comes in twice a week, talks too much, drinks too little, and somehow always leaves with more than he paid for. He's got the kind of swagger that says, "I once bribed a grain collector and lived to brag about it." You've learned to spot his kind. Polished beard, chipped bronze ring, eyes that scan the room like he's composing a list of favors he's owed. He slides onto the bench nearest the counter and taps his fingers in a rhythm that makes your spine tighten. Tap, tap, pause, tap. "I brought something," he says. You don't respond. You're hoping if you don't feed the conversation, it won't grow, but it always grows. He reaches into his tunic and, of course, pulls out his cylinder seal. It's pressed into a clay envelope, freshly stamped, still soft at the corners. "I just finalized a contract," he says. "Thought you'd like to see it." You glance at the imprint. It's a lion chasing a goat, a hunting scene, common but expensive. You nod politely and move to pour him a bowl. He stops you. "Wait, let me show you how to really pour." You freeze. Here we go. He comes around the counter like he owns it, shoulder brushing yours, breath thick with anise and self-importance. You step back, not obviously, but enough to let him know you're not in the mood. Still, he takes the ladle. He dips it, leans in too close, spills a little, laughs like it's charming. "See? It's all about the angle." You smile tight. "And not spilling." He grins. "You're funny. That's rare in a woman." You wonder how many bruises it would leave if you hit him with a ladle. You sigh instead. Historians still argue whether Sumerian tavern women were respected professionals or informal concubines. The truth, you think, is less poetic. You're a moving target with a mop. He finally sits, drinks, and gestures for bread. You give him the oldest piece in the basket. Quirky tidbit? Some cylinder seals had erotic scenes, tastefully scandalous by Sumerian standards. You once saw one with a man offering a date cake to a woman reclining beneath a palm tree. Your boss said it was symbolic. You think it was just dessert with extra steps. You leans forward. You ever think about leaving this place? You blink. The tavern? Uruk. The city. You raise an eyebrow. And go where? He shrugs. Larsa, Lagash, even Akit if you're brave. I know people. You've heard this line before. Every traveling merchant thinks he's the first to offer you an escape wrapped in a vague promise and a donkey cart. You change the subject. Did your last seal crack? He frowns. What? You gesture toward his new one. Looks fresh. Most men don't change their seal image unless something breaks or burns. His face twitches, just enough to notice. Old one went missing, he says slowly. Careless nephew. Your heart skips. You murmur something vague and wipe a spot on the counter that isn't there. Because the broken seal in your belt, the one still wrapped in linen, is beginning to feel heavier than silver. You're interrupted by a loud bang at the back door. A delivery, sacks of mash, newly milled and smelling like sweet dust. You thank the porter, drag them inside, and nearly trip over the goat. Again. Back at the counter, the man is gone. just like that. No goodbye, no payment, no parting smile, but he's left something, a single date, perfect, ripe, sitting in the center of his bowl. You stare at it. It's a message. You're sure of it. You pick it up. It's warm. You glance out the door. He's already disappeared into the maze of alleyways beyond the ziggurat. And in your pouch, the broken seal presses against your hip like a buried warning. You pocket the date. Slowly. Carefully. Like it's ticking. Not because you're hungry, though you are, but because something about it feels off. Not poisoned, no, but deliberate. Too deliberate. The kind of gesture that means, I know you know something. You return to the counter, and suddenly every bowl feels heavier. Every slosh of beer echoes like a drumbeat. The goat bleats once, as if confirming your anxiety. You try to refocus. Work is grounding. There's flatbread to slice, more lentil paste to stir, and a jug of sour mash to strain before it turns to sludge. But your hands keep drifting to your belt pouch. You can feel the broken seal through the cloth, jagged edges like a secret threatening to cut its way out. And then the music starts. It begins as a thrum, reed pipes and finger cymbals from the street beyond the shutters. Someone bangs a rhythm on a drum. A crowd gathers. You peek out. Yep, festival time. It's the mid-moon celebration, a ritual mix of fertility, gratitude, and excuses to drink until the stars blur. Which means dancing. Your coworker gives you that look. You groan. Here in Uruk, barmaids are expected to dance. Not by law, by culture, which is worse. You don't have to perform like a temple priestess, but if you don't sway a little, smile a little, and keep the rhythm, you'll start to lose customers, or worse, gain the wrong ones. Step into the open floor. The regulars hoot in approval. You roll your eyes, then start to move, just a little. Hips, shoulders, feet. Your ankles protest, but the beat is easy, hypnotic. 1, 2, 3, pivot. A child claps in the doorway. An old man whistles between missing teeth. And somewhere in the corner, the man with the new seal is back. Watching. Again. Your movements falter for half a beat. You correct quickly. Keep going. Remember what your boss said. Don't stop unless you want someone to ask why. You spin once. Catch your breath. Quirky detail? Sumerians didn't just dance. They documented it. There are clay tablets describing entire dance routines, some with gestures meant to summon rain or seduce a suitor. You once saw a traveling dancer who claimed her ankle bells could make barley grow. She left with 7 marriage proposals and a goat cart. You, sadly, are not that dancer. But you know enough to keep the customers happy. Someone tosses a sprig of mint onto the floor in front of you. That's either a blessing or an insult, depending on who you ask. You smile politely and bow, just in case. Then, mercifully, your boss calls time. You retreat behind the counter, cheeks flushed, hair stuck to your neck. You gulp down a ladle of cool water from the kitchen basin and sit for a moment behind the half wall. You'd kill for a pillow or a moment of quiet. No such luck. A low hiss. Someone's whispering near the curtain. Creep closer. She has it, one voice says. Sure it's the same seal, another asks. You don't recognize the speakers, but the topic is unmistakable. He said it cracked on the floor. Thinks she hit it. She was the last one. Cleaning. Your breath catches. You clutch the pouch at your belt. What'll the temple do if they find out?
A pause.
Then, depends. Maybe nothing, maybe exile. You step back quietly. The voices vanish into the murmur of the crowd. You're not sure if they saw you, but you're very sure you've stayed in one place too long. You take the seal out under the table. It's broken, clean in two, the image still visible, a lion chasing a goat. The same one from earlier. Historians still argue whether broken seals were legally voided or cursed. Either way, they weren't meant to be hidden in a barmaid's belt pouch. You look at the goat in the corner. It looks back, blinks, chews slowly. You whisper, "I might need your help." The goat sneezes. Evening creeps in slowly, with a sky stained the color of old wine and soot. The shadows stretch longer, the air grows cooler, though not by much, and the flicker of oil lamps begins to replace the punishing sun. The tavern takes on a new mood. Less bustle, more murmur. Fewer merchants and workers, more whisperers and watchers. These are the hours when secrets come out of hiding, and so do eyes that linger too long. You light a fresh wick, dabbing it in sesame oil, and set it into the wall sconce. It casts just enough glow to keep the tables visible, and just enough shadow to make people feel hidden. That's good for business. You're wiping down the corner table when you hear them. Voices like flint on stone. Low, tense, conspiratorial. Two men are leaning close together, heads nearly touching. One wears the robe of a minor scribe, the other a tunic with frayed edges and something tucked beneath it, maybe a scroll, maybe a blade. You move quietly, staying close but appearing distant. His ledger disappeared. She was seen near the temple courtyard, one mutters. Coincidence, the other hisses. She's just a tavern girl. She had the seal. That again. You straighten and walk to the hearth to stoke the coals, but every word sinks into your spine like a sand grain in a sandal. It's only a matter of time before someone says your name. Suddenly, a familiar shape blocks the doorway. She's here again. Not a customer, not even a person you'd call neighbor. More like a force of nature, wrapped in dyed wool and perfume that smells of crushed cedar and something slightly burnt. The gossip woman. You don't know her name. No one does. But she knows everyone's. She strolls in with the confidence of a temple singer and takes her usual seat, near the back against the wall, where no one can sneak up behind her. She doesn't even order, she just waits. Someone always brings her a bowl. You do it this time, placing it gently on her reed mat. She nods once, then gestures you closer. I heard, she says softly. You've got a souvenir. You blink. A what? A seal, cracked, decorative perhaps, misplaced certainly. You don't answer. Your hands suddenly feel enormous and far away. Relax, she purrs. I'm not the temple. I'm the net. And you're a fish, wriggling in it. You take a breath. What do you want? To help, she says. No one survives in Uruk alone. Especially not barmaids with secrets. Quirky tidbit, in Sumerian lore, there was once a goddess who whispered people's sins into birds' ears so they'd carry the gossip across the city. You're starting to suspect this woman is her reincarnation. She takes a sip, smacks her lips. Decent pour tonight. Then, almost as an afterthought, watch for the temple spy. He has a limp, favors his left leg, wears too much coal. You nod once and back away, heart pounding. Then Something clicks. You have seen that man 3 days ago, pretending to spill a jar, slipping behind the storeroom. You thought he was just drunk. You duck into the kitchen, where it's hotter but quieter. You splash your face with water from the washing basin and stare into the warped bronze mirror. Your face looks the same. Same tired eyes, same smudge of ash on your cheek. But everything underneath, moving, shifting. You reach into your belt pouch and pull out the seal. The crack runs through the lion's belly. The goat's face remains intact. You press the pieces together and turn it slowly in the light. A name is carved along the edge. Faint, barely visible. Not the merchant's name. A woman's. That's unusual. Seals typically belong to men unless... Historians still argue whether women in Sumer could legally own and register seals, but evidence suggests some did, especially priestesses, scribes, and high-ranking brewmasters. Could it have been hers? The gossip woman's? You wrap the pieces back up in linen and tuck them deep into the storage urn marked dried onions. No one checks that one. Ever. Your boss calls for more loaves. You grab the basket and pass them around, forcing your hands not to shake. Then you see him, limp, coal, left leg forward first. The temple spy. He's watching the doorway, not you. For now, you lower your eyes and keep moving. The temple spy lingers like a bad smell. He pretends to be just another customer, slouched on a reed mat, with a half-empty bowl and an untouched crust of bread. But you notice the little things, how he never really drinks, how he always faces the door, how his right hand rests too casually near his waist, not near his food, but near whatever's tucked under that shapeless cloak. You move about the tavern with trained ease, placing bowls, collecting empty jugs, sweeping stray crumbs and dreams into corners. But your eyes keep drifting back to him, and you remember what the gossip woman said. No one survives in Uruk alone. It's time to survive smart. You fetch the older barmaid, your co-worker, your sometimes mentor, sometimes tormentor. She's seated behind the counter, plucking a splinter from her palm with a bone needle and humming a temple hymn off-key. You crouch beside her. Keep your voice low. We've got a limp at table 3. She raises one eyebrow. Temple? You nod. She groans. Every festival, they come sniffing for sin and silver. She stands, cracks a back, and grabs the jug mocked tamarisk ale. It's the strong stuff, barely legal, wildly inconsistent, and known to turn even experienced drinkers into impromptu prophets. Watch this, she says. She strides over, smiling like a woman with nothing to lose. Good evening, kind sir. Another pour? The spy blinks, caught off guard. She pours anyway, 3 fingers of the bitter ale, no reed straw. She leans in, whispering something only he hears. His eyes widen. He stiffens. Then, miraculously, he stands, downs the bowl, and limps out without another word. You rush to your co-worker. What did you say? She grins. Told him we'd already been blessed by the high priest himself, and that the goat in the storeroom sees everything. You burst out laughing, Maybe from nerves, maybe from the absurdity of it all. Fear, she says, wiping her hands, is sometimes more useful than truth. A lull settles over the tavern. You finally exhale, but not for long. The boss calls for you again, this time in that voice that suggests something official. You find her in the back alcove, staring at the small household altar tucked into the corner. A clay figure of Ninkasi sits beside the offering bowl. A few sprigs of mint and a stale barley cake lie at her feet. Your boss doesn't turn. Did you know, she says, that in some cities barmaids were forbidden from entering temples? You stay quiet. But here in Uruk, she turns, finally, eyes glinting in the firelight. We live between the rules. We serve priests and porters alike, and sometimes we cross lines we don't mean to. Your mouth feels dry. She gestures to the seal, not the broken one, another one, lying on the altar. I found this buried in the ash bin, she says. It's a match to yours, isn't it? Your breath catches. I didn't put it there. She nods, but not in agreement, in recognition. I believe you, but someone did. You step closer. The seal is unbroken but worn. The same lion, the same goat. It's not a duplicate, it's the original, which means the broken one in your pouch is a forgery or a warning. Quirky fact: Sumerians had clay seals that impersonated official ones. It was a crime punishable by public shaving and temple labor, not exactly life-ending, but humiliating enough to ruin a name forever. Someone's trying to loop you in, your boss says. Use your face, your hands, your role here. I don't know why, but we're not playing along. You nod, slowly. So what now? She picks up the seal, wraps it in cloth, and places it inside a clay jar marked salted lizard tails. Now, she says, you pretend nothing happened. You smile, you dance, you pour, and you wait. You return to the front. The temple spy is gone. The goat is asleep. The gossip woman is chewing on mint. The air feels heavier now, but clearer. Like a storm that's not quite ready to break. You grab a clean bowl, fill it with a gentle pour, and whisper toward the goddess. Just a few more hours. You keep pouring. That's what you do. When the gods squint in your direction, and when strangers leave cryptic fruit, when temple spies limp through doorways, and your boss stashes secrets in jars labeled lizard tails, you pour. And you pretend the floor isn't about to crack open beneath your sandals. The crowd thins a bit now, as it always does after the music dies down and before the night truly ignites. It's that quiet middle stretch, the eye of the daily storm, where your back starts to ache and your shoulders carry more than weight. Then someone calls from behind the screen. Barley bread, 2 bowls, and no sour looks this time. You recognize the voice. He's back. The man with the seal, not the spy, not the merchant, the one. You take a slow breath, grab the bowls, and make your way over. You keep your face steady, maybe even a little bored. He's already seated, fingers steepled, watching a pair of moths dance near the oil lamp. He doesn't look up. You've been busy, he says. You set down the tray with a clink. So have you. He gestures toward the bread. You didn't taste this first? You arch an eyebrow. You think I have time for snacks? He grins. You should. He tears the loaf, dips it into the bowl, and eats slowly. You cross your arms. You left a date yesterday. He nods, mouth full. Did you eat it? No. Good. Silence. Then he leans forward. That seal you found, it was mine. Not originally, but mine now. You keep your hands still. It was given to me by a woman who carved it herself. She's dead. I broke it. Why? Because I needed someone else to find it. Someone who'd ask the right questions. Someone invisible. You laugh, one bark of disbelief. Invisible? You think I'm invisible? To the right people, yes. That's why you're useful. Historians still argue whether Sumerian taverns were gathering places for spies, rebels, or just gossips with good timing. Based on tonight's mood, you suspect the answer is yes. I'm not your courier, you say. No, he agrees, but you're smart and you're trapped. You stiffen. You live where debts are paid in barley, where women dance to avoid questions. You think you're safe because no one notices you, but now he taps the table. They do. You lean in. So fix it. He studies you, then nods. I will. But I need one more thing. Of course, always one more thing. There's a delivery coming tomorrow morning. A ledger wrapped in red cloth. You'll take it. You'll say it's a gift from the brewer's wife. And if they ask, smile. Say you like the pattern. He stands, places another silver bead on the table. This one is etched with a symbol, too faded to read, but enough to say, this is official. This matters. You pocket it without looking. Quirky tidbit. In some taverns, tokens like this were used as credit slips, proof of trust or of deals best left undocumented. Your boss once showed you a jar of them, each with a notch or scratch that only she could interpret. As the man leaves, you feel your body again. The ache in your calves, the grit in your teeth, the heat behind your ears. You're shaking, just a little. The goat wakes, bleats once, then curls back down. You go to the back room, splash water on your face, and stare at the wall. You're just a barmaid. But not tonight. Tonight, you're part of a story. A dangerous one. Maybe a sacred one. You light another lamp and get back to work, because dawn isn't far, and neither is trouble. Dawn always feels personal. It creeps through the tavern like a nosy ant, poking into corners, lifting the veil of night and making everything look just a little too real. The chipped bowls seem more chipped. The floor, smudged with ash, barley skins, and half-dried tears, feels harder under your feet. Even the goat, usually content to sleep until breakfast, looks up at you like you're the one being unreasonable. You haven't slept, but you've kept moving, because this morning isn't like the others. There's a knock at the shutter, sharp, rhythmic. 4 taps, a pause, and one more. The signal. You open it just enough to see a boy standing in the pale light, maybe 12, hair uncombed, tunic tied with a rope, no name, no words, just a bundle wrapped in red cloth shoved into your hands. He's gone before you can blink. You close the shutter and hold the parcel like it might bite. It's heavier than it looks. Squared edges, a stone weight tucked into one corner, probably to make it feel like it's nothing special. Clever. You unwrap the first layer and glimpse what's underneath. A wooden tablet. Burnished smooth, covered in clay, sealed with the faint stamp of temple authorization and a personal seal. Not the lion and goat one, a new one.
It's a moon over barley stalks.
You don't recognize it, but your gut does. This is the thing everyone's been whispering around. The thing that made a seal break and a spy limp and a gossip woman tilt her head like she already knows your ending. You rewrap it, tie the cloth tight, hide it inside the urn marked dried celery paste, which hasn't contained celery or paste in months. You glance up and jump. She's standing right there. Your boss. She doesn't speak, just watches you. Her arms are crossed, but her eyes aren't angry. They're assessing. Finally, you're smarter than I thought. You don't reply. She nods toward the urn. Keep it cool. Bury it under lentils if anyone asks. You blink. You knew it was coming? I didn't know, she says, but I expected something. She steps closer. Listen to me. You're being pulled into something sacred and ugly. There's no law that protects you now. Only loyalty. Choose who gets it. You nod, swallow hard. Who sent it? She shrugs. Could be the high priest. Could be a mid-level scribe with too much ambition. Could be a dying man's last confession. Pauses. Then, and it could be a trap. You don't ask why she's helping you. You know. You work the same space, breathe the same soot, clean the same blood off the same floor. If you go down, she might go with you. Or worse, she might be left behind. Historians still argue whether tavern women had alliances or just shared burdens. But here, in the soft ash light of a new day, it feels like the same thing. Take a moment to yourself. Sit beside the hearth, holding the warm clay scoop you use for lentils. The fire is low. The noise outside has barely begun, and yet your thoughts are louder than ever. What is this ledger? A list of bribes, a map, a contract soaked in betrayal. You could open it, you could read it, but you don't. Not yet. Quirky tidbit? In Sumer, opening a sealed tablet without permission was considered divine theft. Some believed the gods would dry your tongue and curl your hands until you confessed. You look at your hands now, still yours, still clean by Uruk standards. For the moment, your boss claps once. Let's move. You stand. Stretch. And get back to pouring. Because the tavern doesn't care about secrets. The beer still needs ladling. The tables still need wiping. The next customer already smells like trouble. But you? You're ready for it. By mid-morning, the tavern transforms into its usual chaos, a blend of clinking bowls, sloshing beer, muttered gossip, and the occasional shout about someone stealing someone else's sandals. You're deep in the routine now. Serve, wipe, smile, duck, repeat. But the air feels different. Everyone seems just a little more on edge, like the sky is holding its breath. That's when it happens. A crash, followed by shouting. You round the corner, towel in hand, and see two men wrestling near the hearth. One is a field worker. You know his face. You've served him for weeks. The other is new, unshaven, and smells like he's been sleeping in his own beer. They're tangled in limbs and barley mush, grunting, pushing, slipping. One of them grabs a ladle, the other grabs a chair. You don't even think. You grab your trusty broom and jump in. Yes, your weapon of choice is a barley bristle broom. It's not elegant, it's not sharp, but it is loud and dramatic.
You slam it on the ground between them. Outside. Now.
Between them, they freeze. Maybe it's your voice, or maybe they just surprised a girl with oil in her hair and lentils on her sleeves is commanding anything. They untangle, grumble. The one with the chair points at his torn tunic and yells something about respect. The other shouts back about over-poured beer.
Typical.
Historians still argue whether beer was rationed fairly among social classes. But from your perspective, it's always someone thinking they deserve more than what's in their bowl. You watch them stagger outside, still arguing. One tosses a piece of flatbread at the other. It hits a goat. The goat bleats indignantly. You sigh and go back inside. The customers cheer softly, either for your handling of the situation or because it wasn't them getting broomed today. Your boss raises her cup in salute. Back at the counter, you spot something else, a smear of red wine. You lean in. It's faint, on the underside of a drinking bowl, not part of the serving line. This was left deliberately. You lift it. The mark is shallow, a broken crescent, jagged at the edge. Not a seal, not exactly. A message? A sign? You remember the red wrap tablet. This bowl's mark. It's identical to the corner impression stamped into the cloth. You didn't notice before. Quirky tidbit. In Sumerian taverns, symbols like these were sometimes used by messengers who couldn't write, or weren't supposed to. Marks on bowls, bread loaves, or even goat horns. You tuck the bowl aside. Clean it slowly. Someone's tracking the ledger, but they're not temple or priest or spy. They're someone like you, invisible, until they choose not to be. You take the bowl to the storeroom and slip it into the back of the dried barley bin. You're collecting quite the museum back here. Fake seals, sacred ledgers, cursed crockery. The next customer taps the counter. A young man, maybe 17, eyes wide, clearly new to Uruk. You pour him a half bowl and smile gently. He tries to pay with a smooth stone. You shake your head. Barley only. He looks crushed. Then produces a handful of lentil pods. You accept them out of pity or solidarity. You hear someone clear their throat. It's the gossip woman again. She nods toward your belt. You've kept it, she says, not a question. You nod. She pulls a thread from her sleeve and winds it around her finger. Tomorrow night, she whispers, by the river, south of the temple garden. You'll know why. Then she's gone. You're left with a half-swept floor, a mostly sober goat, and about 4 dozen secrets, more than you had this morning. You wake before sunrise the next day, not because anyone called you. No, no one calls you anymore, but because your body simply knows it's market day. And that means one thing in your life: marriage proposals. The tavern swells early with the scent of roasted onions, sweaty crowds, and faint desperation. Today the workers are dressed marginally better, the scribes slightly cleaner, and the farmers, well, their goats smell nicer at least. And he walks in again. The one who offered you a donkey last festival. He's back. Fresh tunic, slicked hair, and a smile like wet clay. Today's the day, he says. My uncle gave permission, and I brought a gift. You brace. He lifts a bundle from under his arm and unwraps it. a dented bronze bracelet, 2 fig cakes, and yes, a half-roofed hut, or at least a sketch of it on papyrus.
My brother drew it, he adds. He's good with corners.
You try to smile politely, which comes out more as a grimace. That's very complete. Just think, he says dreamily, you wouldn't have to pour beer for strangers anymore. You look around. A merchant is drunkenly humming to his barley. A goat is trying to climb a step stool. Your boss is arguing with a delivery boy about missing dates. Fruit, not social. You turn back to him. And miss all this? He looks genuinely hurt. So, no? Not today. He sighs, unwraps a fig cake, and wanders to a table. You slip behind the counter, half laughing, half exhausted. Historians still argue whether Sumerian marriages were arranged entirely by family or included actual choice. You know this. The barmaid never really gets to choose unless she's clever, lucky, or terrifying. You're aiming for 2 out of 3. You're wiping a spill when another offer comes in. This one less romantic, more transactional. A spice trader with cracked heels and purple-stained fingers leans in and whispers, "I can take you to Nipper." Quietly, you disappear. You pause. Why would I want to disappear? He glances around. Because someone's watching. And they're getting closer. You dry your hands. Who sent you? He shrugs. Let's say I owe someone who's still alive because a tavern girl once made the right choice. You don't ask what the choice was. You don't ask who the girl was. Instead, you serve him a bowl on the house and say nothing more. He taps the table twice before leaving. That afternoon, while scrubbing barley mash from the grain sieve, your boss sidles up beside you. Another proposal? She asks.
3rd one this week, you reply. This one included plumbing.
She snorts. Romantic. Then she lowers her voice. The temple's been asking questions about you. Your hands freeze in the mat. They don't ask direct, but they circle like buzzards. You wipe your hands, suddenly cold. Quirky fact? Sumerians believed vultures were sacred animals of the underworld goddess Ereshkigal. Seeing one fly over your house was considered an omen of death or renewal. You've seen 3 this week. Your boss leans close. Keep your shift short tomorrow. Bring something warm and remember the river. As the day winds down, you return to the counter. Another customer asks for the usual. You serve him automatically. But your eyes keep drifting toward the curtain, toward the night, toward the riverbank you've never dared to walk alone. And the seal? Still in your pouch, still waiting. You leave just before moonrise. No one stops you. Your boss gives a nod, barely a glance, as you slip through the back storeroom, past the shelf of cracked jugs and dust-covered ledgers. Even the goat doesn't bleat. It's like the entire tavern has conspired to look the other way. You wrap yourself in a spare shawl, one that still smells faintly of lentils and sandalwood, and head south. The city is quieting, but not silent. Uruk never truly sleeps. The hum of night trade, the lull of reed flutes from distant windows, the slap of sandals on packed clay, it all blends into a heartbeat you've lived your whole life inside. You follow the canal, then duck into the shadows of the temple garden walls. Everything smells like wet earth, overripe figs, and secrets. And then You see her,
the gossip woman.
sitting by the water's edge, her feet bare, toes skimming the surface like she owns it. The moon paints her in silver. She's not dressed for hiding. She's dressed like a priestess at a wedding. You came, she says, not turning. You nod. Step closer. The river laps gently at the edge, soft and slow. I brought it. And you pull the seal from your pouch, the broken one still wrapped in cloth, and the ledger still bound in red. She extends a hand. You hesitate, then pass it over. She doesn't even look at it, just places it beside her on the stones like it's a loaf of bread or a prayer. You were part of it now, she murmurs, whether you said yes or not. You sit beside her, not close, but not far. Who is it for, you ask? She smiles faintly. Someone who once knew how to make gods nervous. You blink. That's a real person? She shrugs. Once. Historians still argue whether rebels existed within temple systems, scribes, barmaids, even minor priests who siphoned off knowledge and passed it through coded hymns. You've heard the stories. You never believed them. Until now. I don't want to vanish, you whisper. Then don't, she says. Stay exactly where they expect you to be. Smile, serve, mop the floor. You glance at the ledger, but this will find its own way. She dips her hand into the river, stirs it once, then lifts her palm. Water drips like melted glass.
You've already done more than most.
Pause. Crickets chirp in the reeds. A frog plops somewhere nearby. Then she hands you a small pouch. Inside, a ring of woven copper and a folded scrap of linen. No writing, just a symbol. A barley stalk bending beneath a crescent moon. Quirky tidbit. In some forgotten corner of Sumerian ritual, that symbol meant servant of harvest and night, a keeper of quiet things. You tuck it inside your tunic, where the cloth rests above your heart. When you look back up, she's gone. You don't hear her leave, no splash, no footsteps, just silence. And the weight of the night. You walk home alone. The tavern waits, lit by a single, flickering lamp. Inside, everything is as you left it. Half-swept floor, stacked bowls, a goat snoring into a jar of leeks. You wash your hands, you tie your apron, you step behind the counter, and the first customer of the night walks in. The customer is a familiar one, a reed worker from the northern district, always with twine under his fingernails and clay dust in his hair. He smiles, asks for the usual, and slides 3 barley cakes across the counter like nothing in the world is different.
Yes, sir. Det alles nu wel mingar. Vi är så du vet att svämmlod fening ner. Det talking like snap. Yep, in your skip down. So scrying out so you know what? This is not like as a hell. Not say it touching. Nobody would know. Or learn the clear. Go under my. You can do it. No, we can do that. I already can do it. Nip it mission right them. Snap the cat check him the game there the neuro. I'll taste. So yeah, Chris on. It is that up even from someone's it's eating of a vampire and where it says to me, but it has so invention that also way nothing can be Mr. The Dilzo room or 200 love you correct is true box what does no one tense what I you found that triply you know we missed do the minions and risk cuz and that is doesn't but doesn't that will be it's rather minute on come on this minute that let's have a lunch small what didn't over let's learn the little and I am in my mind instead need to show with prepared me all the gentle we forgot what you would act I don't well what different I got into them this is missing yeah I know I don't have what if is that you know the spirit I love it here and we're grouping the I go tally with it say I don't think it's true I'm not like on the place and size art secretary, mittens, darker, lunch, and Mazam already has said Logan Bloom, like a president on Millie Water, Medina Levin, piece of that, or something. Yeah, you how this person, he's called Rand. I'm a little murder, music, your just the recall, Andrew, and type. It's lost lump hangs up in the number to the Saturday, I mean, the tile to number date of Thorn, chewing with me, and bland from Belina. And look at the meat, such a there's on there, like singing, not page lost like 2 in US when yelling out of the web, and how she just doesn't stick to me, and bumping and shepherding them for Bill, burning the cow, yes, one, and I'm stale. The curse wasn't the school doctor, sent them in poison election for sons of Malin, some for the Dripsiano, children, man, with the hell you have the wing, never so, me, not done, you put it up, you know what I mean, some from Goldman's lemon here, and a great plant, radiation, and a low dark animals, very plain with wings and limbs, all workings, they have yarring, that they and Williams doing nothing, all children, here, one painting of quality, like, one to project that meeting, on a planet, and national sunny and healed, not a winter, hands, house, what's the school man, no one's, it's open, here are seasons, and I'll be this may begin at one, I'll follow really, but then Malay, right, this level.
Because that's your job now. That's who you are again. Still, you pour with steady hands, pretending the night before didn't happen, pretending you didn't walk back from a moonlit rendezvous with a ledger that could light fires across half the priesthood. But you feel different, and your hands know it too. Every movement feels sharper now, purposeful, as though some invisible thread has knotted itself into the fabric of your spine. You check the back shelf where the broken seal used to be. Gone. The jar labeled salted lizard tails is still there, but now the lid sits slightly ajar, as if it's been opened by hands more practiced than yours. You don't touch it. Not anymore. Commotion bubbles near the entrance. Someone shouting in a nasal voice, the tone of a bureaucrat who's used to being ignored and hates it. A city clerk. Great. He stomps into the tavern with the fury of a man who hasn't eaten and thinks that's your fault. He slams a clay tablet onto the table and starts reciting something about licensing disputes and measured pours. You fetch your boss. She listens patiently, arms crossed, face unreadable. When he finally pauses to breathe, she says, "Would you like some bread while you shout?" It's a checkmate move. He hesitates. She shoves a loaf into his hand. You're proud. Historians still argue whether Sumerian barmaids had legal protection under temple law or were simply tolerated by the system that relied on them. You know the answer. Survival is your only real statute. The clerk mutters something about reassessing volumes and storms out, less a threat than a tantrum in bureaucratic form. Still, your boss turns to you and says, "We'll be checked. Soon." You nod. "Then we measure exactly." She smiles faintly. "Exactly what?" "Exactly enough." You glance at the regulars, some chatting, some sipping in silence. The rhythm of the tavern begins again. And then he returns. The man with the seal. This time, he doesn't speak. He sits in the far corner, drinks what you bring him, and leaves a copper bead with a barley stalk pressed into it. A thank you, a goodbye, maybe both. You find it on the mat long after he's gone. You hold it a moment, then slide it into your pocket, beside the copper ring the gossip woman gave you. They feel like bookends to a chapter no one saw being written. Quirky tidbit. Some Sumerian taverns used beads and rings as pass tokens, symbols of trust or debt or warning. You've started a collection. At the end of your shift, as dusk filters through the thatched shutters and the goat huffs in its sleep, you wipe down the counter one final time. Your boss lights a lamp and says softly, "It's quiet. That means they're planning. You nod. Then so should we. She places a folded cloth on the counter. Inside it, a new apron, thicker linen, deep pockets. Time for a promotion, she says. You laugh. Does it come with fewer secrets? She smirks. No, it comes with better ones. No. You slip it on. It fits. The air smells like bread and dusk. And outside, the moon begins to rise. Night pours itself over Uruk like warm oil. Slow, thick and glistening. You feel it seep into your bones as you lean against the tavern doorway for a breath of cool air. The street is hushed. A dog pads by, sniffing at old fig bits. A potter wheels his empty cart home, the creak of its wheels like an old song you forgot you knew. Inside, the hearth crackles low. A few regulars remain, quiet now, too tired for gossip, their bowls half full and dreams half stirred. This is your favorite hour, the in-between. You gather the empties, wipe down the benches, and sweep the same patch of floor for the third time, more out of rhythm than need. Your body moves automatically while your mind drifts back to the riverbank. Copper ring, the barley and moon sigil, the ledger, now gone. You're still not sure what's changed. Only that something has. And then another voice breaks the stillness. Evening, says a man in dusty sandals and a tunic too plain to be noticed.
You didn't hear him come in.
That's reason enough to worry. He sits, waits, doesn't ask for a bowl.
Instead, he pulls a tiny clay token from his belt pouch and places it carefully on the counter.
You freeze. Because it matches the barley and moon symbol exactly. He says nothing, just nods once, almost imperceptibly, as if to confirm, yes, this is deliberate. You reach under the counter, fetch the last ladle of the dark brew, the one you keep for moon nights and strange requests, and pour it slowly, evenly, no froth, no rush. He takes it, drinks in silence, then slides the token toward you. For when it's time, he says, and leaves just like that. You don't move. Not for a long time.
Quirky tidbit. Some Sumerian cults believed that beer carried memories, that each bowl shared in ritual could pass on a story, a secret, or a command. You've poured thousands of bowls. You wonder how many secrets you've unknowingly delivered.
You lock the tavern door. Not just the bolt, the lock, the one behind the curtain that only your boss and one other know about. She's already gone for the night, left you in charge. Another quiet test. You check the storeroom. The urn labeled onion mash now holds something heavier than vegetables. You don't need to open it to know what's there. Instead, you return to the counter and place the new token inside a small cup beneath the shelf, next to the seal, next to the copper bead. Your collection of proof that you're more than a barmaid. You are now a link in something, maybe holy, maybe treacherous, probably both. You pour yourself a half bowl. Sit on the threshold. Sit. The stars shimmer like coins scattered across black clay, and the breeze carries the scent of baked earth and something distant, like cedar smoke, and stories not yet told. Scurries by. The goat snorts in its sleep. And for the first time in days, you let yourself breathe. You are no longer just the one who serves. You are the one who remembers. The next morning brings heat before light. You feel it before your eyes open. The way the air clings to your skin. the way the clay beneath your sandals warms with the breath of another long day. You stretch, roll your shoulders, and wince. It's the kind of ache that comes from knowing too much and saying too little. Inside the tavern, nothing has changed. And everything has. The jugs are lined in their usual crooked row, the tables still sticky, the floor already crunching under last night's crumbs. But now there's a strange new quiet, a space between sounds that wasn't there before. You feel watched. Not by customers, by moments. You light the oil lamp with the short wick. It flares a bit too high and then settles. You swear the flame bends toward the corner shelf, the one with the cup of trinkets. You almost smile. Almost. Then the door opens. Not slammed, not shuffled. Opened. Carefully. A woman enters. Tall, with salt gray braids and the steady walk of someone who doesn't get lost. She's dressed plainly, but holds herself like someone born in a palace. You know who she is. Everyone does. A temple auditor. The kind they only send when things are no longer whispers. She says nothing at first. Just stands, hands tucked into her sleeves, surveying the tavern like she's memorizing a dream. Your boss joins you behind the counter without needing to be called. Her expression is calm, but her fingers drum on the underside of the table. 3 beats, then a pause, a signal. The woman speaks at last. I'm here to review the barley records. Of course she is. Also, she adds, eyes flicking to you, we've received a note about a ledger missing. You don't flinch. Your boss speaks first. We keep no ledgers. We serve by bowl, measure by handful, and trust our customers. The woman's lip twitches, but it's not a smile. Trust is expensive these days. She sits. A younger scribe slips in behind her, stone tablet already open. They order nothing. They watch.
You move as usual.
Bowl, pour, wipe, repeat, but you feel the weight of every step. Then, without a word, the younger scribe lifts a cup from that shelf. The shelf with the tokens. He turns it over. Out spills the barley moon sigil. He picks it up, squints, then holds it up to the light. Your boss steps forward. That's a loyalty token from a customer, not uncommon. The scribe looks to the woman. She takes the token, rolls it between her fingers. Whose loyalty? Your boss shrugs, asks the goat. It's not a joke. Not really. The goat has been watching everything. The woman places the token down gently. Then she says something you don't expect. You'll be inspected again. Soon. Possibly by someone less reasonable. A pause. Keep your records clean. She stands. Her scribe fumbles the tablet shut, stumbling slightly in his rush. At the door, she glances back. Her eyes rest on you. Careful who you carry things for, she says. Not all gods are forgiving. And then she's gone. Quirky tidbit? In Sumer, some believed that auditors could carry curses sealed into their tablets, binding misfortune to the dishonest, or simply to the unlucky. You sweep the floor in silence after they leave. The token is still on the counter. You don't return it to the cup. You place it in your pocket. You're collecting more than tokens now. You're collecting evidence. You should be tired of this by now. the secrets, the symbols, the careful conversations that feel more like rituals than dialogue. But strangely, you're not. You find yourself moving with sharper grace, your mind balancing bowls and lies with the same rhythm. The tavern is still the same. Drunken workers, clay-smudged scribes, and the ever-present goat. But you've become something else. They know it.
The customers glance your way more often now. Some out of curiosity, others with the silent respect reserved for people who might know something. A few avoid your gaze entirely, especially the ones who asked questions last week.
This afternoon, a man with temple ink on his wrists sits near the window. He orders beer, plain bread, and a moment of your time. You serve him the first two. Ignore the third. He waits, watches, leaves behind a barley cake with a circle drawn in ash on the crust.
You break it in half and toss it into the fire.
Your boss sees. She nods once. Quirky tidbit? In Sumerian food customs, bread marked with symbols was sometimes used as a silent message, offering, warning, or challenge. Once you received one shaped like a frog. You still don't know what it meant. The goat sniffs at your sandal. You nudge it gently. Not now, you whisper. There's too much bread and not enough clarity. By evening, the tavern is full again. Something about the moon, half hung and bleeding gold, has stirred the city's thirst. But beneath the chatter, you hear it. A name.
Your name.
Spoken softly, not shouted, not sung, just breathed. Like an invocation, you trace the sound to a group near the back, young, robed, whispering into cups. One of them looks up and locks eyes with you. You nod. Slightly. He stands, approaches, drops a folded scrap of fabric on the table. For you. You wait until he's gone before opening it. Inside, a pressed barley stalk. Still green, still damp, and a tiny clay shard, broken from something bigger, but enough to recognize the crescent and barley sigil. It's happening again. You pass it to your boss. She holds it up, squints, and slips it beneath a jug. They're sending signals, she says, like birds calling across rooftops. Why now, you ask? She shrugs. Maybe the wind changed, or maybe someone lit a fire that no one knows how to put out. You think about the ledger, the seal, the red cloth, the woman at the river, the copper ring. And now, a green stalk, not a message, a summon. You finish your shift, your hands moving without your mind. Every bowl served is a beat in a countdown. Just before close, a customer you don't recognize drops a small pot on the floor. It shatters. You go to clean it, but something glints in the clay shards. You brush aside the pieces. Inside the rim is carved a word. Tonight. And the barley stalk, etched so faintly you'd miss it if you didn't already know it was there. You sweep the pieces into your apron. Your boss says nothing. You both know what it means. You light one final lamp and wait for the city to sleep. The streets of Uruk after midnight are quieter than a prayer whispered into sand. You walk with practiced silence, your feet tracing the path by memory, not moonlight. Past the sealed market stalls, past the temple wall that smells of burnt myrrh and river wind, past the old fig tree whose roots are said to hear everything. The barley stalk is in your pouch, so is the clay shard, so is the ring. You don't knock. There's no door, just a recessed step a slit of torchlight, and the scent of warm beer and ink. They're waiting for you.
Inside the chamber, neither house nor temple, you count 7 figures, some hooded, some not. A few you recognize by posture alone.
One of them is the gossip woman.
She nods once. You nod back. A man speaks, his voice calm, dusty like old papyrus.
You carried what could not be written. You place the seal on the low table, then the broken shard, then, slowly, the ring. They examine each, murmuring among themselves. The ring makes one of them pause. The shard makes another curse under his breath. The gossip woman leans forward. The temple is fractured. Some believe the goddess's voice is being smothered by law. Others prefer things silent. You ask quietly, "What do you believe?" She smiles. "I believe in barmaids who survive and remember." Another figure steps forward. A woman with clay under her nails and a crescent tattoo behind her ear. She unwraps the red cloth ledger you once held, opens it, and begins to read aloud, not words, but names. Dozens, maybe hundreds. Some names you know. Some you've poured for. Some have poured for you. And with each name a weight lifts. A knot unties. You are not alone. Quirky tidbit? Sumerians had a word for this kind of gathering, ki-ma-ti, a place where hidden things become known, a remembering. The gossip woman hands you a bowl, not of beer, but water, cool, clear, with a single mint leaf. You drink, and then they fade back into shadow. No speeches. No grand titles, just a quiet return to stillness. You leave with empty hands, but a full knowing. Back at the tavern, the lamps are low. The goat is asleep on your mat. Your boss sits at the counter, pretending not to have waited up. You nod once. She says nothing. Tie on your apron. You wipe the counter. And just before the shutters open to the rising sun, you pour the first bowl. You offer it quietly to Ninkasi, because today, like every day, begins with the act of service. Now, it's a service done awake. The sun crests over the flat-roofed houses of Uruk, painting everything in dusty gold. You exhale slowly, feeling the warmth on your face, your feet planted firmly on swept clay, your hands damp from the morning's first spill. The tavern breathes with you, its walls humming with stories held in barley and silence. The counters still smell like sesame and ash. Somewhere nearby, a vendor shouts the day's prices. But here, everything softens. The broom rests in the corner, leaning just so. The goat twitches in sleep, dreaming of fig peels and rebellion. And the altar glows faintly in the light, as if Ninkasi herself had stretched and smiled. You move slowly now, each step gentle, each breath long. You fold a cloth with care. You dip your fingers into the basin, cool water, rinsing away yesterday's worries. And you sit. Just for a moment. You let your shoulders relax. Let the noise of the city dull to a far-off rustle. Let the weight of what you've carried drift into stillness. Because in this moment you're not a barmaid, not a messenger, not a keeper of seals. You're just you. Alive, awake, and home. So breathe. Let the clay cool beneath your feet. Let the last sounds of this story quiet to a hush. The sun is rising, but your eyes can close now. You've made it through the night, and somehow you're still here. Sweet dreams, traveler.